The Grand Assembly Hall of Station Ornth Prime was the largest structure ever built by the Galactic Conclave. Its ceiling rose so high that clouds sometimes formed beneath it. Light from 3 captured stars filtered through crystal walls, casting rainbow patterns across the gathered delegates of 47 species. This was the heart of galactic civilization. This was where the future was decided. Ambassador Yun Murray stood at the back of the human section, her hands folded behind her back. She wore the simple black uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. No medals, no decorations. Humans had learned long ago that the Conclave saw such displays as signs of primitive aggression. So they dressed plainly. They spoke softly. They smiled when insulted. For 30 years, it had been the human way. Murray had spent 15 of those years climbing through the ranks of galactic diplomacy. She had learned 7 alien languages. She had memorized 10,000 protocols. She had bowed so many times that her back ached in cold weather, all because she believed that patience would earn humanity a seat at the table. Today, High Arbiter Velthus would teach her how wrong she had been. The High Arbiter floated to the central platform on his gravity throne. He was a Velithus species of tall, thin beings with skin like polished metal and eyes that held no visible emotion. The Velith had founded the Conclave 3,000 years ago. They had never let anyone forget it. The Assembly will hear the matter of species 4891, Velthus announced. His voice echoed through translation devices worn by every delegate. Known locally as humanity. Species 4891. Not even their name. Just a number in a catalog. Make kept her face calm. Beside her, Lieutenant Seo Hannah gripped her datapad so tightly that her knuckles turned white. The young communications officer had been with the diplomatic team for only 2 years. She had not yet learned to hide her feelings. The Security Council has completed its assessment of the human species, Velthus continued. Their biological drives toward conflict and territorial expansion pose an unacceptable risk to galactic stability. Therefore, the Council has approved the following protective measures. Protective measures. Murray had heard those words before. They were used when the Conclave wanted to control a species without calling it control. Velthus raised one long finger. First, all human military development will be frozen at current levels. No new warships. No new weapons. No expansion of existing forces. A murmur passed through the assembly. Some delegates nodded in approval. Others watched the human section with curious eyes. Second, Velthus continued, human population growth will be limited to 1% per decade. Excess population will be relocated to designated reserve worlds under Conclave supervision. Murray heard someone behind her make a small sound of disbelief. She did not turn to look. Third, permanent observation stations will be established on Earth in all human colony worlds. Conclave monitors will ensure compliance with all measures. The assembly hall fell silent. Even species who disliked humanity seemed surprised by the severity of the restrictions. Population controls. Permanent monitors. These were measures used against dangerous species. Species that had committed crimes against the galaxy. Humanity had committed no crimes. They had followed every rule. They had accepted every insult. And still, it was not enough. Velt spread his arms wide. These measures are not punishment. They are protection for humanity and for the galaxy. We act not from fear, but from wisdom. The human species is young. They do not yet understand their own dangerous nature. In time, perhaps in a few thousand years, they may earn greater freedoms. Few thousand years. Murray almost laughed. They were being told to wait 100 generations for the privilege of being treated as equals. Velthus looked toward the human section. Does the human delegation wish to respond? You may have 30 seconds. 30 seconds. 30 years of service to the Conclave, and they gave her 30 seconds. Murray walked forward. Her footsteps echoed in the vast hall. Every eye turned to watch her, the small human woman in her plain black uniform. Standing before the most powerful beings in the galaxy, she reached the speaking platform and looked up at Velthus. For a long moment, she said nothing. The silence stretched. Delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Then Myray spoke. Her voice was calm and clear. Humanity withdraws from the Galactic Conclave. Effective immediately. All treaties are void. She turned and walked back toward her delegation. The hall exploded. Delegates leaped from their seats. Voices shouted in 100 languages. Translation devices squealed with overload. Velthus called for order, but no one listened. Myray did not stop walking. She reached her delegation and nodded once. Without a word, every human in the hall stood and followed her toward the exit. Delegate Morith of the Kelosi Dominion blocked their path. He was a massive creature, covered in armored plates, the color of dried blood. His people had always been the loudest voices calling for restrictions on humanity. You cannot do this, Morith growled. You are bound by treaty. You will face consequences. Myray looked up at him. She was less than half his size. She did not blink. We are no longer bound by anything, she said. Step aside. Something in her eyes made Morith hesitate. He had spent decades dismissing humans as weak and cowardly. But the woman standing before him showed no fear, no anger. Only a cold certainty that made his scales itch. He stepped aside. The human delegation walked out of the Grand Assembly Hall. They did not look back. Behind them, chaos consumed the conclave. Species that had supported the restrictions now demanded explanations. Species that had remained neutral suddenly realized they had no idea what humanity might do next. Alliances that had held for centuries cracked under the weight of sudden uncertainty. High Arbiter. Athos watched the doors close behind the last human. For the first time in his long life, felt something he did not recognize. It took him several minutes to identify. The emotion? It was fear. On the transport back to human space, Lieutenant C.O. Hanna approached Ambassador Ewan Myray. The young officer's hands were still shaking. Ambassador, she said quietly, what happens now? Myray looked out the viewport at the stars. Somewhere among them, Earth waited. Billions of humans who had spent 30 years hoping the galaxy would accept them, Myray said. We stop hoping, and we start preparing. She touched the communication panel and opened a channel to Earth. This is Ambassador Ewan Myray. The Conclave has shown its true face. Humanity stands alone. She paused. Alert Admiral Kang Taiho, it is time. The message raced across the stars at faster than light speed. Within hours, it would reach every human world, and the galaxy would learn what happened when humanity stopped asking for permission. The orbital defense platform Heaven Gate hung above Earth like a metal moon. It was the largest structure humanity had ever built. Ring of steel and weapons that circled the planet at the edge of the atmosphere. The Conclave had inspected it many times. They knew every gun, every shield generator, every ship bay, or they thought they knew. Admiral Kang Taiho stood in the command center, watching data streams flow across dozens of screens. He was a tall man with gray hair cut short and eyes that revealed nothing. He had commanded Earth's fleet for 20 years. In that time, he had never lost a battle. He had also never fought one. The Conclave did not allow it.
Captain Park,
Sunho said, approaching with a data pad. All fleet commanders have acknowledged the communications blackout. We are dark across all human space. Taiho nodded slowly. Good. And the outer colonies? Silent. The Conclave has sent 17 diplomatic vessels requesting contact. All have been ignored. Let them wait. Taiho turned to face the viewport. Earth glowed blue and green below, peaceful and beautiful. 8 billion people lived on that world. Another 12 billion lived on colony worlds across human space. All of them were now cut off from the galaxy, and none of them were afraid. That was the difference the Conclave never understood. Humans did not follow rules because they were weak. They followed rules because they chose to. They had been patient because they hoped for peace. But patience was not the same as powerlessness. The door to the command center opened. Dr. Beek Gina entered, followed by Lieutenant S.C.O. Hanna. Gina was a small woman with round glasses and hair that was always slightly messy. She looked like a librarian. She was actually the most dangerous scientist in human space. Admiral Gina said. I have completed my analysis of the intercepted transmissions. Taiho gestured for her to continue. Gina activated a holographic display. Lines of alien text appeared, with human translations below. Lieutenant Essio Hanna discovered these communications hidden in standard conclave diplomatic traffic. They were encrypted with Velith military codes the conclave told us did not exist. Hanna stepped forward. Her hands no longer shook as they had on the transport. Something had changed in the young officer since the assembly. Fear had been replaced by cold anger. The messages date back 12 years, Hanna said. They detail a long-term plan to reduce human influence in the galaxy. The restrictions announced yesterday were only the first phase. Taiho's expression did not change. What was the final phase? Gina pulled up another document. This was sent by Delegate Morith to the Colossi Military Council 6 months ago. The translation appeared on screen. Taiho read it in silence. Around the room, officers stopped their work to watch. The message was simple and direct. Morth proposed the sterilization of human colony worlds using biological agents. The deaths would be blamed on a natural plague. Within 3 generations, the human population would fall below sustainable levels. The species would decline without the conclave ever firing a shot. The command center was completely silent. They were going to kill us, Captain Park said softly. All of us. While we followed their rules and bowed to their delegates, as Taiho said. His voice was calm, but something dangerous moved behind his eyes. They were, and they thought we would never know. He turned to face his officers. 50 men and women who had dedicated their lives to defending a species that the galaxy wanted to erase. The conclave sees us as animals, Taiho said. Dangerous animals that must be controlled or destroyed. For 30 years, we showed them patience. We showed them cooperation. We showed them everything except what they truly feared. He walked to the main display and entered a command code. The screen changed, showing a map of human space. Red dots appeared, hundreds of them, scattered across every system. Project Prometheus, Taiho said. Weapons platforms hidden in asteroid fields disguised as mining stations, buried in the surfaces of dead moons. The Conclave's inspectors walked past them 1,000 times without knowing. Captain Park stared at the display. Sir, there must be 300 installations. 347, Dr. Beak Gina corrected. Each one capable of destroying a Conclave battlecruiser. I designed them myself. For the first time, Taiho allowed himself a small smile. The galaxy thinks humans are weak because we do not show our weapons. They mistake patience for helplessness. Today, that mistake becomes their problem. He activated the communication system. All Prometheus stations. This is Admiral Kong Taiho. Authorization code. Sunrise. Activate all systems. Maintain silent running until further orders. Across human space, hidden weapons came to life. Sensors powered up. Targeting systems calibrated. Missiles loaded into tubes that had waited decades for this moment. The galaxy did not notice. The galaxy was too busy laughing at the silly humans who had walked out of the conclave. They would not be laughing much longer, Ambassador. Yoon Murray arrived at Heaven Gate that evening. She had not slept since leaving Orinth Prime. There had been too much work to do. Colonies are ready, she told Taiho. Every human world has received the alert. They know what the conclave planned. Good, Taiho said. Fear is useful, but anger is better. An angry population will not surrender. Murray looked at the displays showing Project Prometheus. Do you think we will need to use them? I hope not. Taiho walked to the viewport. Stars filled the darkness beyond Earth. Weapons are most effective when they are never fired. But if the conclave forces our hand, we will not hesitate. And the other species? The ones who were not part of the plan? They will have a choice. Stand with the conclave or stand aside. Taiho turned to face her. We are not seeking war, Ambassador. We are seeking respect. If they give us respect, there will be peace. Murray nodded slowly. And if they don't? Taiho did not answer. He did not need to. That night, a single message was broadcast to every human world. Ambassador Yoon Murray's voice carried across the stars, reaching billions of ears. Citizens of Earth and the colonies. The Conclave has revealed its true intentions. They do not want peace with humanity. They want our extinction. For 30 years, we tried to earn their respect. That time is over. From this moment, we stand alone. We speak to no one. We trust no one but our own. Stand ready. The galaxy is watching. The message ended. Across human space, 20 billion people looked up at the stars, and for the first time, the stars looked back with uncertainty. 1 week after humanity walked out of the Grand Assembly, High Arbiter Velthos called an emergency session of the Galactic Conclave. He expected to unite the galaxy against the rebellious species. He expected fear and anger directed at humanity. He expected to restore order. He received none of these things. The assembly hall was different now. The confident murmurs that usually filled the chamber had been replaced by nervous whispers. Delegates who normally sat proudly now hunched in their seats, exchanging worried glances. Something had shifted in the week since the humans left. The galaxy had realized it did not know what humanity would do next. Velthus floated to the central platform, his gravity throne humming softly. He raised his hands for silence. The whispers continued for several seconds before dying away. The Conclave faces a crisis, Velthus began. The human species has rejected our authority. They have withdrawn from all treaties. They have sealed their borders. This cannot be allowed to stand. Delegate Morath stood immediately. His armored body gleamed under the lights as he addressed the assembly.
Our High Arbiter
Speaks truth, Morath growled. Humanity has insulted this body. They've rejected our rightful leadership. We must respond with force. I propose an immediate military action to bring the humans back under control. Several delegates nodded in agreement, but not as many as Morath had expected. Speaker Thela of the Orinthi Collective rose slowly. The Orinthi were ancient and cautious. A species of floating beings who communicated through color changes in their translucent bodies. They had survived 3,000 years of galactic politics by avoiding unnecessary conflicts. The collective does not support military action, Thela said, her body shifting to deep blue, the color of firm disagreement. The humans have done nothing aggressive. They have simply left. Attacking them would make us the aggressors. Morath's claws scraped against his chair. They defy the Conclave. That is aggression enough, is it? Another delegate spoke, Ambassador Galfen of the Rithani Federation. The Rithani were traders, a species whose entire economy depended on interstellar commerce. My people have trade routes that pass through human space. Since the humans went silent, those routes have been closed. Our economy has lost billions in the past week alone. The assembly stirred. This was news that affected everyone. If we attack humanity, Galfen continued, those routes will be closed permanently. The humans will destroy our ships. Or worse, they will destroy the stations and supply points that our traders depend upon. War with humanity would be economic suicide. You fear trade losses more than galactic security? Morath demanded. I fear reality, delegate. Galfen's voice was cold. When did you last fight a war against humans? Morath hesitated. The Kelosi Dominion had never actually fought humanity. No one had. The humans had always submitted to Conclave demands. They had always backed down until now. Warlord Grath stepped forward from the military section of the assembly. He was a massive creature, even larger than Moratha, being bred for war. With thick gray hide and 4 arms that ended in hands capable of crushing metal, he commanded the Conclave's peacekeeping forces. I have intelligence to share, Grath said. His voice was deep and rumbling like distant thunder. My scouts have been observing human space since their withdrawal. The assembly fell silent. Grath activated a holographic display. According to our last census, humanity possessed approximately 70 combat-capable vessels. A modest force. Nothing to concern the Conclave's 3,000 warships. He pressed a button. The display changed. This is what our scouts observed yesterday. The image showed human space. Red dots indicated human vessels. There were not 70. There were over 200. The assembly erupted in shocked voices. Delegates shouted questions. How was this possible? Where had the ships come from? Why had the conclave not known? Grath waited for silence before continuing. The humans have been building in secret. For how long? We do not know. But these are not small ships. Our scouts identified at least 12 vessels of dreadnought class larger than anything in the conclave fleet. Possible, Morith snarled. We inspected their shipyards. We counted every vessel, counted what they showed us, Grath replied. We saw what they wanted us to see. The realization spread through the assembly like a cold wind. For 30 years, the conclave had believed humanity was under their control. They had believed humans were weak and obedient. They had believed wrong. Hi. Arbiter Velthus tried to regain control of the session. This changes nothing. Humanity still cannot match the full force of the conclave. If we unite, we can overwhelm them. Can we? Speaker Thila's body had shifted to pale yellow, the color of doubt. The humans showed us only weakness for 30 years. Now we learn they were hiding their true strength. What else have they hidden? The question hung in the air. No one had an answer. Over the next several hours, the emergency session devolved into chaos. The Colossi Dominion demanded immediate military action. The Orienthi Collective refused to commit forces. The Rathani Federation threatened to withdraw from the conclave. Entirely if trade routes were not restored, smaller species began having their own discussions. The conclave had always told them that unity meant safety, but the conclave had also told them humanity was harmless. Now trust was breaking down everywhere. Veltz watched his carefully, built coalition fracture before his eyes. Late that night, after the session ended without resolution, 3 delegations secretly contacted human space. They sent messages begging for private treaties. They promised neutrality in any conflict. They offered trade agreements outside conclave control. The humans did not respond to any of them. In his private chambers, Velthus reviewed reports from across the galaxy. Species were questioning conclave authority. Military allies were demanding assurances. Economic partners were threatening withdrawal. One human woman had walked out of the assembly. She had spoken 12 words, and those 12 words had done more damage than 1,000 warships ever could. Velthus stared at the reports, until the artificial dawn began to light his windows. He was 3,000 years old. He had led the conclave through countless crises, but he had never faced anything like this. The humans had not attacked. They had not threatened. They had simply stopped playing the game. And in doing so, they had revealed a terrible truth. The conclave's power had always depended on species believing in that power. Now belief was crumbling, and Velthus had no idea how to stop it, in the darkness of human space. Ambassador Yoon Murray received reports of the emergency session. She read about the chaos. She read about the fear, and for the first time in weeks, she smiled. 3 weeks after humanity's withdrawal from the Galactic Conclave, Warlord Grath received his orders. The Conclave Security Council had finally reached a decision. They would send a peacekeeping fleet to the border of human space. The fleet would demand that human leadership come to the negotiating table. If the humans refused, the fleet would escort them by force. Grath did not like the plan. He had studied the intelligence reports. He had seen the images of human dreadnoughts. But orders were orders. The Conclave had spoken. He assembled 50 warships, the largest peacekeeping force ever deployed. Battle cruisers armed with weapons that could crack planets. Carriers loaded with fighter craft. Support vessels carrying enough supplies for a month-long campaign. It was a display of overwhelming power, designed to remind humanity of their place in the galaxy. The fleet jumped to faster than light speed and crossed the void, between stars in a matter of hours. When they emerged at the border of human space, Grath expected to find a token defense force. Perhaps a few dozen ships at most? Enough to make a statement, not enough to actually resist. What he found was Captain Park Sunho, the bridge of the Asterisk. Sovereign Will Asterisk was quiet as the Conclave fleet appeared on sensors. Sunho sat in the command chair watching the enemy ships take formation. 50 vessels. Impressive by Conclave standards. Enemy fleet has completed transition, Lieutenant SEO Hannah reported from the communication station. They are broadcasting on all frequencies. Standard Conclave demands for surrender. Sunho nodded. Ignore them. Yes, sir. For several minutes, nothing happened. The Conclave fleet held position at the border. The Sovereign Will held position inside human space. Neither side moved. On the Conclave flagship, Grath grew impatient. His demands were being ignored. The single human ship was not responding. This was exactly the kind of disrespect the Conclave had warned him about.
Our weapons.
Grath ordered. Prepare to advance. His tactical officer hesitated. Warlord, should we not wait for their response? Their silence is their response. We will teach them that the Conclave is not to be ignored. The Conclave fleet began to move forward. 50 warships advancing in perfect formation, weapons charged and ready. Captain Park Sunho watched them come. He waited until they had crossed exactly 1/3 of the distance to the border. Then he spoke a single word. Now, space itself seemed to tear open. Ships emerged from nowhere from behind asteroids. From inside sensor shadows, from positions that the Conclave fleet had scanned and dismissed as empty, one moment, there was a single human vessel. The next moment, there were 200. Grath froze in his command chair. His displays screamed warnings as targeting systems tried to track the sudden appearance of a fleet that should not exist. Human ships surrounded his force on all sides. They had been there the entire time, hiding in ways the Conclave had never seen before. And then the dreadnoughts appeared. They rose from the darkness, like mountains coming to life. 12 vessels, each one larger than anything in the Conclave inventory. Their hulls were black as space, covered in weapons that glowed with contained power. They were beautiful and terrible, designed not just to fight, but to inspire fear. Admiral Kang Taiho's voice filled every communication channel. It was calm and unhurried, as if he were discussing the weather. Warlord Grath. This is Admiral Kang Taiho of the United Earth Fleet. You have entered human space without permission. You may leave, or you may stay. Grath's claws dug into his chair. His tactical officer was reporting numbers 200 human ships, 12 dreadnoughts, weapons locked on every Conclave vessel. The odds were impossible. Choose quickly, Taiho added. For a long moment, Grath said nothing. He had been a warrior for 200 years. He had never retreated from a battle. His honor demanded that he fight, even against impossible odds, but honor would not bring back 50 ships. Honor would not explain to the Conclave why he had thrown away their peacekeeping fleet in a battle he could not win. All ships, Grath said slowly, each word tasting of ash, reverse course. Return to Conclave space. Officers stared at him in disbelief. Some opened their mouths to protest. Now, Grath growled. The Conclave fleet turned and fled. 50 warships that had come to demand surrender now ran for the border like frightened animals. Not a single shot was fired. Not a single blow was exchanged. The humans let them go. Captain Park Sunho watched the enemy fleet disappear into faster than light travel. Around him, officers remained at their stations, weapons still ready. No one celebrated. There was nothing to celebrate. This was not victory. This was simply a message delivered. Lieutenant SEO Sunho said, "Release the recording to all galactic news networks. Every single one. I want the galaxy to see what happened here today." Within hours, the footage spread across known space. Species that had dismissed humanity watched in stunned silence. They saw the Conclave's mighty peacekeeping fleet approach human space with confidence. They saw the human ships appear from nowhere. They saw the dreadnoughts rise like gods from the darkness, and they saw Warlord Grath run away. The psychological damage was beyond calculation. The Conclave had spent 3,000 years building a reputation for invincible power. Grath's retreat destroyed that reputation in a single afternoon, on Station Orinth Prime. High Arbiter Velthus watched the footage 17 times. Each viewing made the truth clearer. The Conclave had not simply underestimated humanity. They had never understood them at all. Delegate Morith demanded another military response. Speaker Thela formally withdrew Orinthi forces from Conclave command. The Rathani Federation announced they would negotiate directly with humanity. With or without Conclave approval, the galaxy was falling apart. And the humans had not fired a single shot. Admiral Kang. Taiho stood on the bridge of the Sovereign Will as the fleet returned to concealment positions. Dr. Beek Gina approached him with a data pad. Intelligence reports indicate 12 species have begun secret communications with human space, she said. They are requesting non-aggression agreements. Taiho nodded. Tell Ambassador Yoon Murray. She will handle the diplomacy. And the Conclave? Taiho looked out at the stars. Somewhere beyond them, Warlord Grath was reporting his failure to a government that had never known defeat. The Conclave will do one of two things, Taiho said. They will accept reality and leave us in peace. Or they will refuse to accept reality and try again. And if they try again? Taiho turned to face her. His eyes held no anger, no hatred, no fear. Only the calm certainty of a man who had prepared for this moment his entire life. Then we will teach them what humanity learned long ago. War is not about strength. It is about will. And no species in this galaxy has stronger will than ours. He returned his gaze to the stars. Let them come, he said softly. We will be ready. 1 year had passed since Ambassador Yoon Murray spoke 12 words that shattered the galaxy. The universe looked different now. Not because of war, there had been no war. Not because of conquest. Humanity had conquered nothing. The change was deeper than territory or power. It was a change in how species saw themselves and each other. The Galactic Conclave still existed, but it was a broken thing. Half its members had withdrawn in the months following Warlord Grath's retreat, the great alliance that had dominated known space for 3,000 years now struggled to fill its own assembly hall. High Arbiter Velthus had been removed from power in disgrace. He spent his final days in a small room on a forgotten station. Watching news reports about a galaxy that had moved on without him, the Kelosi Dominion suffered most. Delegate Morith had demanded war with humanity right until the end. But the Kelosi economy depended on trade routes through human space. When humanity closed those routes permanently, the Dominion's wealth collapsed. Within 6 months, Morith was overthrown by his own people. Within 8 months, the Kelosi were begging humanity for mercy. Humanity showed more mercy than the Kelosi deserved. They reopened trade routes under new terms, fair terms, equal terms. The Kelosi had to swallow their pride and accept being treated as partners rather than masters. Many of them choked on that pride. But they had no choice. The Orinthi Collective had been smarter. Speaker Thela had refused to commit forces against humanity from the very beginning. Now she sat in a new kind of assembly hall, one built above Earth's largest ocean, floating on platforms that caught the sunrise. This was the meeting place of the Terran Accord. Ambassador Yoon Murray had built the Accord from nothing in a single year. It was everything the Conclave should have been, and never was. No species was forced to join. No species was required to submit. Membership meant cooperation, not obedience. It meant respect, not fear. 12 species had joined in the first 6 months. Another 8 joined after that. More were waiting, watching, deciding if this new alliance would last today. Speaker Thela had come to discuss the Orinthi becoming the Accord's 21st member. Your Accord is interesting, Thela said, her body shifting through shades of blue and green. You ask nothing from members except honesty and mutual defense. Ray sat across from her at a simple table. No thrones. No platforms. Just 2 beings talking as equals. We ask for what we offer, Murray replied. Nothing more. The Conclave offered protection. The Conclave offered control and called it protection. There is a difference. Thela was silent for a moment. Her people had survived 3,000 years by avoiding conflict. They had joined the Conclave because it seemed safer than standing alone. Now they had learned that safety built on submission was no safety at all. The Orinthi Collective accepts membership in the Terran Accord, Thela said finally. We hope this is the beginning of true peace. Murray smiled. It was a rare expression for her, but genuine. So do we, speaker. So do we. Far above Earth, Admiral Kang Tai-ho had retired the fleet to defensive positions. The dreadnoughts that had terrified the galaxy now rested in orbital docks, their weapons cold and silent. There was no need to display power anymore. Everyone knew what humanity could do. Tai-ho himself had stepped back from command. Younger officers like Captain Park Sun-ho now led the fleet. It was better that way. Tai-ho had been built for a time of danger. Sun-ho was better suited for a time of watchful peace. Dr. Beek-Gina continued her work in laboratories that no longer needed to hide. The secrets of Project Prometheus were public now, the weapons themselves. But the fact that humanity had developed technology the Conclave never imagined. Scientists from a dozen species came to study with her. She taught them freely. Knowledge shared was stronger than knowledge hoarded. Lieutenant SEO Hannah had been promoted twice. She now served as the Accord's chief communications officer, handling first contact with species that wanted to join. The young woman who had once been unable to hide her feelings had learned to channel those feelings into purpose. Every message she sent carried the same truth. You do not need to bow to anyone on Earth. Captain Park Sun-ho walked through the streets of Seoul on a rare day of leave. The city was bright and busy, filled with people who went about their lives without fear. Children played in parks. Families gathered for meals. Students studied for exams. Normal life, continuing normally, Sun-ho stopped at a small plaza where a monument had been built. It was simpler black stone column with words carved in every human language. The words told the story of humanity's withdrawal from the Conclave. They told of the silence, the chaos, the standoff at the border. They told of a galaxy that had tried to control humanity and failed. But the final words were the most important. We did not seek war. We did not seek chaos. We simply refused to accept chains. Let this monument remind future generations, dignity cannot be given. It can only be taken. We took ours. May we never give it away again. Sun-ho read the words slowly. He had been there, on the bridge of the Sovereign Will, when Grath's fleet turned and ran. He remembered the silence afterward. No celebration, no cheering. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing that humanity would never bow again. A small child ran past him, chasing a ball. The child laughed, completely unaware of the galaxy beyond the sky, completely unaware of the Conclave, the Accord, the great powers that rose and fell among the stars. That was the point, Sun-ho realized. All of it, the secrets, the weapons, the silent defiance, had been for this. For children who would grow up free. For generations who would never know the taste of submission. The ball rolled to Sun-ho's feet. He picked it up and handed it to the child with a smile. Thank you, the child said, and ran back to play. Sun-ho watched for a moment, then turned and walked on. Above him, stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere among them, the galaxy was still adjusting to a universe where humanity stood as equals. It would take time. Generations, perhaps. But time was something humanity had plenty of. Ambassador Yoon Murray received one final message that evening. It came from a species at the far edge of known space, a species the Conclave had conquered centuries ago, nearly forgotten. The message was simple. It asked a question. Is it true? Can a species truly refuse to submit? Murray typed her response carefully. She thought of Velthus and his 30 seconds. She thought of Grath and his retreating fleet. She thought of the monument in Seoul and the child with the ball. Then she sent her answer. Yes, it is true. And if you need help remembering how, humanity will stand beside you. The galaxy had learned what happened when humanity stopped asking for permission. Now, it would learn what happened when humanity started offering friendship. It was, Murray thought, going to be an interesting future.